Before we dive into the heart-pounding drama of Alejandra Torres's fight against injustice in a Miami courtroom, let us know where you're joining us from. Drop a comment with your city or country, and if you're moved by stories of courage and truth, hit that subscribe button. We're just shy of 1,000 subscribers, and your support fuels our mission to share powerful tales of triumph. Now, let's step into the tension of the Miami-Dade County Courthouse, where one woman's battle for her community shakes the foundations of corruption. The gavel's thunderous crack sliced through the humid air of the Miami-Dade County Courthouse, a sound that seemed to carve Alejandra Torres's fate in stone. Her voice, laced with a trembling defiance, rose above the suffocating weight of injustice. At 36, Alejandra sat in the defendant's chair, her teal dress a vivid contrast to the courtroom's cold marble and mahogany. Her dark eyes, framed by tightly pulled hair, burned with resolve, even as the walls of this grand chamber closed in. A space crafted to intimidate those who, like her, bore the weight of a Latina heritage in a system that often scorned it. Alejandra had poured her soul into the Sol de Libertad Community Center in Little Havana, a haven for immigrant children whose laughter filled its colorful walls. She'd fought to protect it from a luxury condo development that threatened to erase the dreams of hundreds of families. Now, fabricated charges of fraud and obstruction of justice loomed over her, orchestrated by powerful men who saw her not just as an obstacle, but as a symbol of everything they despised. The jury's skeptical glances and the gallery's murmurs pressed against her, but Alejandra clutched her worn notebook, her only weapon, filled with stories of the community she'd sworn to defend. Judge Harold Dempsey, perched high on his bench, radiated contempt. His law and order reputation masked a darker truth. His rulings often bore the sharp edge of racial bias, his sentences heaviest for defendants with names like hers. Whispers tied his brother-in-law to the condo project, a conflict of interest buried beneath layers of influence. Alejandra's husband, Javier Torres, a U.S. Supreme Court justice, had been summoned to Washington for an urgent session, leaving her to face this storm alone. She'd texted him in desperation, praying he'd return in time. "All rise!" the bailiff bellowed as Dempsey swept in, his robes swirling like a storm cloud. Alejandra stood, her hands trembling but clasped tightly to hide it. Case number 392C, State of Florida versus Alejandra Torres. Charges: fraud and obstruction of justice. The clerk announced, her voice mechanical. Dempsey's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Ms. Torres, how do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Alejandra replied, her Cuban accent threading through her words. The jury shifted, some scribbling notes, others staring as if her presence alone was an affront. Prosecutor Victor Langston, a man whose tailored suits matched his political ambitions, rose with a predator's grace. "Your Honor, the state requests bail be denied. Ms. Torres has flouted the law and, given her international ties, poses a flight risk." The jab stung. Alejandra's family had been in Miami for 2 generations. Yet Langston's words painted her as a foreign threat. Her court-appointed attorney, Daniel Rivera, barely 30 and visibly rattled, fumbled his response. "Your Honor, Ms. Torres is a cornerstone of Little Havana. Her center supports 300 families. She's not fleeing." Dempsey's lips curled into a sneer. "Mr. Rivera, your client is accused of forging documents to derail a $50 million development. This isn't some charity raffle. These are grave offenses." His tone carried a venom that felt personal, as if Alejandra's identity, her heritage, her defiance, offended him. Alejandra's chest tightened. The condo project would bulldoze homes, replacing them with towers for Miami's elite. She whispered urgently to Rivera. The signatures were real. Families signed to save the center. Rivera patted her hand, distracted. "We'll address it, Alejandra. Stay calm." Langston called Claudia Wentworth, the city's planning director, whose polished demeanor screamed entitlement. "Ms. Wentworth, describe your interactions with the defendant," he prompted. Wentworth adjusted her designer glasses. "Ms. Torres obstructed our work at every turn. When the condo project was greenlit, She submitted fraudulent claims that her center was a historic landmark, backed by forged signatures. Alejandra's blood boiled. "That's not true," she hissed to Rivera, who shushed her. Those signatures came from abuelas and tios whose families had built the center's legacy over decades. Wentworth's expert analysis was a lie, but Rivera's cross-examination was a disaster. His questions scattered and easily dismissed by Dempsey's swift gavel. During a brief recess, Alejandra sat alone, her notebook open to a photo of the center's kids painting murals. Rivera was outside, taking a call. She overheard a clerk whisper to a colleague, "Dempsey's got this locked. His brother-in-law's funding the condos. This trial's just theater." The words hit like a blade. Alejandra had sensed prejudice, but this confirmed a conspiracy rooted in greed and bias. Her fingers shook as she texted Javier beneath the table. "It's worse than I feared. Judge is corrupt. Please hurry." Dempsey's voice snapped her back. "Ms. Torres, surrender that phone. This isn't your little barrio playground." The word barrio landed like a slap, and a juror flinched. A bailiff seized her phone, leaving Alejandra to pray Javier had seen her plea. The trial resumed, each prosecution witness delivering rehearsed lies. A city official claimed Alejandra had bribed residents for signatures. Another swore the center had no historical value. Rivera's objections were feeble, overruled by Dempsey's smirking authority. By 4 p.m., Alejandra saw the jury's faces harden, their doubts calcifying into judgment. Dempsey announced an evening session to expedite justice, his haste a clear sign of his intent to convict. "Your Honor," Alejandra blurted, unable to stay silent, "I need a recess to replace my counsel. Mr. Rivera isn't equipped for this." Dempsey's face twisted with fury. "Ms. Torres, one more disruption, and you'll rot in a cell for contempt. Sit down and respect my court." Tears stung her eyes, but she obeyed, her hope dwindling. The prosecution called its final witness when the courtroom doors groaned open. A hush fell, heavy as the Miami heat. Javier Torres entered, his charcoal suit pristine, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. His measured steps echoed with purpose. Whispers erupted, "Supreme Court Justice Torres." Langston's pen froze, and Dempsey's gavel trembled in his hand. "Proceedings will continue," Dempsey barked, slamming the gavel, but his voice cracked. Javier's voice cut through, calm but commanding. "Your Honor, I request permission to approach." Dempsey's face drained of color. "Justice Torres, this is highly irregular. We're in session." "Indeed," Javier said, his eyes like steel. "A session built on lies to destroy my wife because of who she is." Gasps rippled through the room. Alejandra's heart leaped as their gazes met, his strength anchoring her. "The court will recess for 30 minutes, Dempsey stammered, rising. 15 will suffice, Javier countered. "And I'll need your chambers." Dempsey hesitated, then nodded, his authority crumbling. 15 minutes. Recess. Javier crossed to Alejandra, his arms enveloping her. "This ends now," he whispered, his voice a lifeline. Langston approached, his smile forced. "Justice Torres, what an honor." Javier's glare silenced him. "Mr. Langston, we'll discuss your evidence suppression soon. Prepare yourself." In Dempsey's chambers, the air crackled with tension. The judge's mahogany desk, once a symbol of power, now seemed a flimsy barricade. Javier stood tall, his presence filling the room with quiet gravitas. "Harold," Javier began, his tone icy, "explain why my wife, a Latina woman fighting for her community, is being crucified in your courtroom with fabricated evidence, all because her heritage threatens your brother-in-law's profits." Dempsey's hands shook as he adjusted his robes. "Justice Torres, I assure you, this trial is above board." "Don't lie to me," Javier snapped, slamming a leather folder onto the desk. "This contains 1. Certified documents proving the center's historic status. 2. Affidavits from 12 residents confirming Alejandra's ethical signature collection. 3. Financial records linking you to the condo project through your brother-in-law's shell company. Dempsey's face went ashen, his voice a whisper. This is outrageous. Is it? Javier leaned closer, his voice low and lethal. The Judicial Ethics Board is already investigating your pattern of bias. Harsher sentences for Latinos, favorable rulings for your family's allies. They're watching, Harold. Alejandra's breath caught. She'd known Javier as her partner, her love, but now she saw the justice who'd faced down corruption on the nation's highest court. Her fear melted into pride, tinged with sorrow for a system so broken. Langston burst in, his confidence shattered. Perhaps we can negotiate. Perfect timing, Javier said, turning. Your office buried emails from the city, verifying the center's status. Those emails are now with the Bar Association's Ethics Committee, along with proof of your selective prosecution of minority defendants. Langston's jaw dropped. There's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Javier cut in, is thinking you could use my wife's heritage as a weapon. Her fight for those children isn't a crime. It's a legacy you'll never understand. Alejandra's eyes welled up. This wasn't just about her. It was about every family in Little Havana, every child who deserved a chance. Here's what happens, Javier said, his voice final. Harold, you recuse yourself, citing a conflict. Victor, you dismiss all charges with prejudice, admitting your evidence failures. Refuse, and this becomes a national scandal. Judge and prosecutor undone by racism and greed. Dempsey collapsed into his chair, his career in ruins. I'll recuse, he muttered. I'll file the dismissal, Langston said, his voice barely audible. Javier nodded, then turned to Alejandra, his eyes softening. Let's go home, mi amor. As they left the chambers, the courtroom fell silent, every eye on them. Dempsey shuffled out, his robes dragging. Court is adjourned. All charges against Ms. Torres are dismissed with prejudice. On the courthouse steps, the Miami sunset painted the sky in fiery hues. Alejandra clutched Javier's hand, her voice breaking. I thought they'd take everything. The center, my freedom, our kids' future. You fought for what's right, Javier said, his voice warm. They underestimated you, Alejandra. They always do. At home, the scent of arroz con pollo filled their modest kitchen. Javier, tie loosened, laughed as their daughter's drawing of the center hung on the fridge. Alejandra set the table, her heart lighter. I never wanted your power to save me, she said, her voice thick. The center. It's for the kids, their dreams. Javier took her hand, his fingers tracing hers. Today wasn't about power. It was about truth. You built that center with your heart, Alejandra. They tried to break you because you're a Latina who dares to lead. But you're unstoppable. She smiled through tears. Tomorrow, I'll tell the families the center's safe. The kids will paint again. And I'll keep fighting in D.C., he said, his eyes fierce. For every Alejandra out there. In the glow of their home, surrounded by photos of Little Havana's vibrant streets, Alejandra felt a fire reignite. Justice was messy, hard-won, but alive, and she'd carry it forward, one child, one fight at a time.